Welcome, everybody, to Connecting the Universe. I'm author and researcher Mike Ricksecker, back at you with another interactive class out of the secret library of the Connected Universe. Well, Happy New Year. And I lied. It's not interactive tonight. This is a pre-recorded show. This is the way we need to start the new year. Sorry, it's not going to be as interactive as we usually do it. But as usual, for those of you that are listening to the audio podcast of this later, the audio version, please join us every Wednesday night, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, connecttheuniverseportal.com. You can also check out the live stream on my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/@mricksecker. And then, of course, for the Connected Universe Portal members, the time travelers, you get the after show. Unfortunately, tonight doesn't have an after show, sorry, because of the pre-recorded requirement this time around. So we have a really interesting class, real interesting show that we have this evening: Plasmoids, Orbs, or Extraterrestrials. And this really stems out of a lot of what we've been talking about lately with the drones. Now, with the drones, well, this was a phenomenon that really kicked up the middle of November. And there were a couple of weeks there in the middle of December where it was just like a firestorm all over the internet. And there were congressional hearings about it. The government was denying any knowledge whatsoever what was going on with these things. They weren't shooting them down either. So apparently they weren't dangerous. They weren't something from a foreign adversary or anything like that. We're going to get into the other things that we're seeing up there with the drones, which were the bizarre light phenomena, these giant orbs, these fantastic balls of light, many of which are still being seen now. The drones are still happening too, but it's one of those things, and this is probably what the government was banking on, was that after a couple of weeks, the coverage of it will die down and people will stop talking about it, but it's still occurring. There are people that have contacted me telling me their stories about these drone sightings that are still occurring. So real quick, though, for those that are interested in the Connected Universe Portal, this is what I call an online learning platform. Basically, view it as, if you like Patreon, which I am bringing the Patreon back. If Patreon is usually the way that you like to support those creators that you enjoy watching, reading, listening to. What I've done with the Connected Universe Portal, because there were certain things I was trying to do on Patreon that it couldn't support, that I was able to do with I use Kajabi as the back end. That I was able to do with Kajabi. I wanted to create a much more robust learning platform, which I have done. So if that's your thing, Patreon, go to the Connected Universe Portal. That's all the content that you're looking for, between monthly Q&A videos. You got sneak peek and behind the scene videos. I do my bigger Mike's Morning Mug out there. I know I've been doing the smaller clips here lately, but these are the much bigger ones. I've got tons of video footage from Egypt. Each of the tours is highlighted there with these massive downloads of videos. So anything and everything that you want to know about the stargates of ancient Egypt, that's out there, as well as the America Southwest, Ireland, exclusive articles, and so much more back there. So check that out, connecttheuniverseportal.com. Okay, so I want to recap a little bit on what's been going on with, when we talked a little bit about the drones, but then the light anomalies. As people were looking up into the skies, along with the drones, they are also seeing these fantastic light anomalies as well. So, when we've posted these, you have your critics out there, you have your skeptics, and they're saying things like, well, it's Venus or something like that. This was, ABC News, well, it's not a professional photographer. Well, it's a professional cameraman from ABC News. And this is something that was up in the sky. And this looks very similar to, here's another one that was captured. Okay. And this is, that's not Venus. That's, look, that's gold in nature. Okay. It's yellow. Venus is green. And we know what Venus is. That's something that we see in the sky all the time. And, the statistics on this, professional photographer using A7 IV 600 millimeter lens, or Sony A7 IV 600 millimeter lens, flying over Little Egg Harbor, New Jersey, and fantastic ball of light that was up there with all of these drones. So then the question, starts becoming, what's the relationship between the two? And there's been a lot of different ideas, a lot of speculation as to um, exactly what they are. Some people were reporting seeing the drones coming out of these. Some were reporting that the orbs were destroying the drones. So a mixture of different things, or that the orbs, the balls of light, these light anomalies were completely something else, but we were noticing them because we're suddenly looking up at the sky to see the drones, and oh, here are these other light anomalies that are up there as well. So we're going to cover a lot of this sort of thing this evening. Got a few clips here that I want to play because as I started posting this information about the drones and then the light anomalies that we're seeing here in New Jersey, I had people from, well, really all over the world, but several people from the same location in Scotland near the Edinburgh area that were reporting seeing the same thing. So I'm going to start here with one of these clips. What's fascinating is over the past couple of days, I've received from two different people, Kate and Christina, near Edinburgh in Scotland, photos and video footage of this object in the sky last Friday night, December 20th. And these were taken like within an hour of each other. One was a little bit earlier than the other, around dusk, and then one was completely dark. But it's most likely the same thing because we're talking right around that same location in Edinburgh, right around the same time, on the same night. What's fascinating is that it seems to be a bit transformative in nature. In the earlier photo from Christina, it's like a diamond shape in the sky. The other footage, the later footage from Kate, it is like this oval orb, not even a completely round orb, it's oval in nature, and it seems to be pulsating in the video. So what is going on with these different light anomalies in the sky? These are things that we're going to keep asking ourselves as we go forward. It's more than just the drones. The drones are helping us to look up at the sky. Yeah, so really interesting there how from it, Christina was a little bit further south. Kate is on the other side of the Firth of Forth from Edinburgh. So in the way that they are looking at, Christina's looking up, she sees like this diamond shape in the sky. And it was a little bit earlier in the evening. So you can see that it was dusk. With Kate, it was a little bit later. It had grown completely dark at that point in time. And as she's looking up at it, it's like, this giant orb. And you could see it kind of shimmering, kind of almost pulsating. It looked like, it has points coming out of it like a giant star. And it was oval though. And so, yeah, a lot of people say, oh, these are stars. Some are saying, oh, you're looking up at Venus. And then other people saying, well, you're looking up at stars. Well, we know what stars look like. And this was much bigger than any star. And also wasn't all the way up in the heavens, up in the cosmos. It was in the airspace of Earth. Okay. So, yeah, really, really fascinating how they were seeing the exact same thing. That happened on December 20th. And they contacted me within a couple of days of that. So I posted that clip there on my TikTok and Instagram right before Christmas. On the following days, I had other people from Scotland saying, hey, I've seen the same things, similar things, and all around that area. So here's another clip discussing that. Recently, I posted clips here from Christine and Kate from Scotland of a strange glowing object that was seen in the sky. Now, since that time that I posted that, there have been several other people from Scotland who have reached out to me that have told me of other objects in the sky that have been seen there, or perhaps they're even the same thing. Some of these were observed on December 26th, others throughout the entire area of Fife, And this seems to be continuing to happen again and again and again throughout that area of Scotland around Edinburgh. Now, just last night, Kate reached out to me again with additional clips that were taken just last night of this similar object that was once again seen in the sky, this pulsating light that this time actually changed different colors. So this is something we're going to have to continue monitoring. Something is definitely going on there in Scotland with these giant orbs, these huge balls of light, which could actually be plasmoids or portals that are manifesting. This is something I'm going to be covering in depth in the upcoming Connecting the Universe this coming week. Yeah, the upcoming Connecting the Universe is coming. We're in that right now. So as you could see there in that clip, it's flashing different colors, right? So when people are saying, "Oh, it's Venus," well, no, Venus doesn't flash different colors. It's a stagnant, solid green. It's a bright green, and it looks beautiful. Not Venus. Again, it's also in Earth's atmosphere. Not a twinkling star. I mean, stars twinkle, yeah, but they don't usually twinkle different colors. Usually, it might twinkle white or maybe a little bit yellowish of a color, maybe a little bluish of a color, something like that. But it'll be kind of the same color. It's not going to go from blue to green to red to white to, yeah, they don't do that. Okay. And that's what this was doing. So what exactly are we looking at here? And yes, there are even since then more from that area. Another woman in fact, Kate's hometown there, Scottish Paranormal team, a guy from there, commented on it that, yeah, they've been seeing a ton of the stuff there. So yeah, it's that area for whatever reason right now is very, very hot with activity. And I suspect one of the draws for this is part of a triangle area there in Scotland. And I wasn't aware of it until on the Egypt tour last year now. In April, Kate was on that tour and we're coming back from Alexandria. She started telling me about this area, which was interesting to me because one of my stories, one of the stories I included in Travels Through Time regarding a type of time slip that occurred was there in the Drim area within this triangle area there. So this is an area that's very, very hot with activity and has been for a long, long time. So is that the draw for these things? Or is the energy there within this triangle area generating some of these light anomalies, which some people have been getting a lot of this too? They're plasmoids. Okay, fine. I don't disagree with that, but let's take it a bit further. Now, some people are like, okay, what the heck's a plasmoid? Well, basically, it's a contained structure of plasma. So plasma is our fourth state of matter. So we have solids, liquids, gases. I do cover this in Portals to the Stars, by the way, my latest book. And basically, it's an ionized gas in which electrons are ripped away from the atoms, creating a positive charge in a fluid-like state. And while it might not be as familiar to us as the other states of matter, because those are around us all the time here, you got a solid and a liquid right here in this water bottle, right? And that can evaporate, right? The water can evaporate and turn into a gas. We see plasma all the time. When we look up at the sun, that's a big, massive ball of plasma. When we look up at the stars, this is Sirius, a fantastic photograph I recently came across of Sirius. Why so Sirius? So that's plasma. In our auroras, bolts of lightning, and some of you may have had one of those old plasma television sets. Yeah. Fun stuff back in the day. I had a business that I was doing, working on one time with a buddy of mine. We were doing digital signage, like way back in the day when nobody was doing digital signage. We were creating these kiosks with digital signage. And the first two that we set up used plasma displays. And as we were testing things out, one just fell over. And we just had it there on there, and it boom, fell over and just cracked that glass a little bit. The gas escaped, the plasma gas escaped, and done. It wasn't going to work anymore. Um, so people have thrown out there, okay, that's a plasma. We're going to get a little bit deeper into that. How does it being a plasmoid help us in what it really is? It's not. So people say, well, it could be ball lightning. Well, yeah. So ball lightning has been very elusive over the years. It's something that scientists for a long time couldn't really even recognize. Does it really exist? Maybe there are a lot of stories about it. Nobody had really ever captured it on camera. In fact, it wasn't all that long ago, like 11 years ago, 2014, that Chinese scientists, finally actually caught ball lightning. And this is like nothing. It's a little video clip, about 11 seconds long, and this was their capture of it. Okay, I'll show it to you. And yeah, I mean, you can kind of see it there. It was using some sort of spectrum camera. I don't know all the specifics on it, but it was late one evening, July 2012, so about 13 years ago. The report was from 2014, and they saw it appear just after a lightning strike, and it was about 900 meters from where they had their cameras set up. So they're basically studying the lightning, and all of a sudden they captured the little ball, and they were able to get that recorded. And this is kind of a thing, is that ball lightning is usually associated with when there's a storm, or maybe near electrical lines, and people kind of see this phenomena occur. Some may be familiar with this. Uh, this is actually CGI. People started reporting this when this came out. It was just a little side project. I forget the guy's name that he was working on, and he was just learning how to do these types of special effects, and created ball lightning going across the train tracks. And people were throwing it out there on social media as it was actually a ball lightning, captured on film. No, it's not. It's CGI, but it's this kind of idea, okay, where lightning's captured in a ball like that. You can see here from this photo of a bolt of lightning, there's a couple little balls in there, and that's really where we actually see it. And the balls themselves usually aren't that big when people actually witness this. They're smaller. They can get a little bigger, but not usually. And the phenomena usually lasts only a few seconds. It can last tens of seconds, right? But it's not sitting up there in the sky at night, huge and massive for hours. That's really not what ball lightning is. And then I've got this like historic one from France. So this is from 1901, and it appeared in a French science book, which I'm not going to try to pronounce the French version. I've tried to learn a little bit of French over the years. I'm terrible at the accent, but in English, it's Nature Review of Sciences and Their Applications to Arts and Industry, where this was described as one of the most curious manifestations of electricity. So you can see the ball lightning there in front of these four guys that were uh, sitting down. I don't know if they're having dinner or what they were doing, but yeah. So I really don't think when you look at those clips and that footage from well, with Christina, it's a diamond shape. It's not even a ball, right? It's a diamond shape, or it could have been a square kind of turned a little bit, yeah, but definitely not a ball. Um, the angle from Kate, yeah, I'm definitely ballish in nature. It was more of that oval, um, but it was up there for so long, and it was think about how high it is in the sky, that would have been pretty huge too. So, yeah, I really don't think it was ball lightning to, address that. So, again, I cover this in Portals to the Stars, and so definitely, of course, check that out. So, one of the interesting aspects of our modern science is they have been trying to study more plasmoids and plasma in not only our world but also around our world out in space. And so you have the the mouthful. You have the magnetospheric multi-scale mission. That's what they currently call it. And really, this is the mission to explore the what we call X points out in space. So this is the area where I've talked about this a lot within this class. I've talked about a lot within a couple of my books. And what this is, it's an area of space where the solar wind meets with the magnetic shield of the Earth. And these are, and even NASA has said, yes, these are portals. Yeah. So you have these portals out in space that, well, there's no predictive model for it. Now, they've had these satellites here out there for almost 10 years. And you can see here from one of their illustrations, um, trying to tackle a new science objective, studying the solar wind in order to understand turbulence in plasmas, one of the least understood topics in physics. So they sent these up there to, yeah, study the solar wind, also study these X points, which they are now calling them magnetic reconnections. So they're trying to get themselves further and further away from calling them portals. You know, they admitted that years ago. Yeah, these are portals. Now we're going to call them X points. Now we're going to call them magnetic reconnection. Okay. Um, and so, yeah, this is where, like I said, the magnetosphere and the solar wind come together. And what's happening is these portals are opening to, well, there's no predictive model for it. You know, these satellites here, when one opens, we'll study it, but they don't know when it's going to open. They don't know how big it's going to open, and they don't know how long it's going to last. They can't predict it. It just happens, and then they study it, and then whenever it feels like closing, it closes. You know, um, and these type of portals allow protons and electrons from the solar wind to enter into our atmosphere at a much quicker rate. So, and they've gone as far as to say, I'll read this off. This is actually, well, this is from the blog article. So, this whole class this evening is based off of a blog article that I posted yesterday. Plasmoids, orbs, extraterrestrials. So go check that out. I'll put the link down in the description. But you know, one of the more, and this is pretty much a excerpt from my book too. So one of the more interesting findings from this still ongoing mission was the observation of magnetic reconnection in magnetic flux ropes, giant magnetic tubes which can form in the wake of previous magnetic connection events, and in Kelvin Helmholtz vortices, the same phenomena that are created when wind blows over water to create waves on the surface. I go forth and say, yes, you read that correctly. Or I should say, yes, you heard that correctly. When these magnetic fields in space reconnect at the X point, they have the capability of creating gigantic magnetic tubes to transfer this energy from the sun to the earth. So, I mean, right in your mind is that vision, that image of a wormhole, a tunnel in space. And so that's why I've taken this a bit further. And when we look at these giant balls of light, these plasmoids, where I'm saying this isn't just a ball of light in the sky. This is an entrance to a portal. This could be a stargate, and a stargate would be an intelligent being that has purposely put this thing there, that has control over it, not just the randomness that we're seeing in space with the X points, but something that is controlled by an intelligent entity, and they can move in and about of it at will. So, okay, Mike, the ball of light doesn't look like a giant tunnel into space. I get that. Did you watch Interstellar? So, what do we have at the end of a giant tube? What is that opening? It's a circle, right? Big giant circle. Well, a circle is two-dimensional. But we are in 3D space. And so what is a circle in 3D space? It's a sphere. It is a sphere. So when we are looking up at something like this, which is a sphere or something like that, we very well could be looking at the entrance to a portal, an entrance to that wormhole to take us. Well, that's the big question. To where? To somewhere else across the cosmos, to somewhere else across the world, to another dimension, to another point in time. That part we don't know. Okay. But if that is, and we're seeing this association between, well, could be the drones and these balls of light. It could be people have reported that out in the wilderness, they've seen balls of light near, could be Sasquatch or some of these other cryptids and beings that they are seeing out in the wilderness. These are reported near UFO sightings. So is this the method of transport that UFOs, Sasquatch, extraterrestrials, to get from whatever their realm of existence is to ours? So since we mentioned it, let's get a little bit into the portals in the wilderness. We have covered this before. I'm going to play a clip here from when we had Ronnie LeBlanc on and discussing this idea of portals out in the wilderness. You think like you have a lot of these missing people, and sometimes when these missing people are found or they find their way back, they'll talk about, hey, I was on the path, heard a noise out in the woods, I took a step off the path, couldn't find what the noise was, turned around to get back on the path, and it was gone, and they're lost out in the woods. So do you think that some of these missing people cases are maybe they're stepping into, whether it's a portal or a vortex or whatever the mode of transportation is that maybe the Sasquatch is using? Do you think they're stepping into something like that?
Yeah, I do. I think there's, the Algonquin tribe talk about in Vermont that there's a specific boulder that if you step on it, you're going somewhere. And so they're talking about it being this portal. And I think that's where some of these reports where people are going into areas and they're having rocks thrown at them, or they're having these Bigfoot encounters, is they could be protecting people from going into these spots where you're walking in through a portal or something like this. Because you just have these incredible stories where people are there 1 minute and they're completely gone.
Yeah.
I mean, David Pilates' work, Missing 411,
right?
Terrifying stuff when you start realizing and reading about how people are just gone and no trace. Like what is taking them, where are they going? Yeah.
Okay, that was from an episode of Edge of the Rabbit Hole that we did. I believe it was last April. I'll go ahead and link that as well. And I had a article on the blog about portals in the wilderness, I'll link that as well. So all these, you're going to have a bunch of links down there in the description. But yeah, so this is really interesting about the, portals out in the wilderness that, people just suddenly disappear. Where did they go? People that have, like I described there, people who have been found later on or find their way back to civilization will tell these fascinating stories about how, yeah, they heard a sound off on the side of the path, took 2 steps, can determine what the sound was, turned around, and the path is gone. Where did they end up? How did they get to being out in the middle of nowhere when they were just on the path? And then other cases that are just horrible, where people disappear. You're walking right alongside your buddy, and 2 seconds later, your buddy's suddenly gone. What happened to him? Where'd he go? These portals, again, they are naturally occurring. They can open randomly, and the interaction between the solar wind and the Earth's magnetism goes all the way down from, or all the way from out there in space around the bow shock to the ground of the Earth. Okay, so these can happen in the sky, some of these missing airplanes, possibly, and then yeah, people, randomly out in the woods and other places too. We always talk about the woods, but it happens other places as well. So it makes you wonder about walking down the street. What's going to happen? Yeah, and I get that's kind of I'm not trying to, scare anybody and not place fear into anyone. We're just talking about phenomena that occurs. Okay, Hoyobacha Forest, a little girl going out into the woods. She's 5 years old. 5 years later, walks out, and she hasn't aged a day. She's still 5 years old. People, had been scouring the woods, scouring the countryside, looking for her, and gave up on her. 5 years passes, and there she is. And yeah, it's really fascinating. What these portals can do. That would be connecting to another point in time. So mentioned, of course, here Sasquatch and some of these balls of light. And I keep saying this, I'm not a big Sasquatch person, but it keeps coming up in conversation when discussing the balls of light and portals and that sort of thing. Are some of these balls of light portals that they may be using, and in Portals to the Stars. So I mentioned Kate earlier. So she's actually a QHHT healer there in Scotland. Professionally, she goes by Catherine Swin. So those of you that are there near Edinburgh, check her out. She does amazing work. And in this one particular session that she had with another QHHT healer, Elise, so part of it is having a past life regression. And I've done this before. Those that know my story about the shadow person, a few years back, I had a session to find out more about that particular entity and what happened to me back in 8th grade. So you go through hypnosis. And part of that was also I had a past life regression it was straight out of the medieval times. It's really fascinating. So this based off of the work of Dolores Cannon. In fact, that's the program that they go through, which is run by her daughter now after Dolores passed a few years back. And so in this session that Kate had with Elise, she had a past life as a Sasquatch. Okay, and she didn't, as you read it, I mean, she didn't know at first that she was a Sasquatch. She really didn't know anything about Bigfoot, Sasquatch, that sort of thing. But it just kind of naturally came out in this session. And she basically talks and describes about using this tunnel, this portal, to move from their place, their, we want to call it realm, dimension, whatever it was, to Earth. And that was their method of transport. And, it really kind of adheres to some of these stories and some of these theories these days that Sasquatch may be interdimensional beings and not native here to the planet, and not a primate, lost primate that's still out there in the wilderness somewhere, that is actually a being that is interdimensional in nature. And some people might find it a little odd, the idea of having a past life as a Sasquatch. You get into Dolores Cannon's work, and there are past life sessions there where people had been extraterrestrials, and they're coming from other planets and these sorts of things. So you're talking about a consciousness. The consciousness doesn't have to go into a human body. It can go into these other beings as well over time. So yeah, really, really fascinating stuff. So when I had, so that was Ronnie on the show back in April. Well, just last month, with everything going on with the drones, I had Ronnie back because he was all over the news about the drones. He was posting multiple clips per day. So go check out his Instagram, his TikTok, all of that. Also brought on Scott Davis. Now, Scott is a remote viewer, psychic medium. He's huge on TikTok, Scotty the Medium. And he also lives there in New Jersey. And he had actually, captured some of this drone phenomena out there. And so in this clip, we're talking about we start talking about the orbs, the light anomalies, and then we start talking to Scott about the remote viewing aspects. So this is kind of interesting. To me, are these the portals or stargates or whatever, if these drones are from, whether it's something extraterrestrial or interdimensional alongside of us or something like that, or these like the gateway to in here?
The interesting piece is they were asking the public for help and identifying what these things were. What was so significant for me that they're like, they don't know what's going on, or do they? We hear about these lights of these drones, or these lights in cluster formations, or shutting off when approached. They're not being detected by radar or giving off any type of heat signature. So they just seem to be at another level.
Now, Scott, I do want to go over your second clip here, because this does seem to be more of that maybe orb manifestation.
So this is pretty remarkable. The universe is an interesting place. So Ronnie here texts me and he says, hey, have you tried to remote view any of these things? And I was kind of being like a little bit coy about it because I felt a little defeated. I had tried a little bit, and then I really gave it the good go. And every time I got into my space where I do remote viewing, I felt like I was getting hit with an electric fence. I was like getting into that space and I was trying to tune into it, and it just felt like electricity hitting me. And then all of a sudden in my vision, it would just be like streaks of light, and almost like a barrier to keep anybody doing that, to keep them back.
Yeah, really fascinating there. Now, a couple different things. So first of all, you saw in that clip that he had provided this light, this ball of light start to emerge, and then it split off into two. Really, really fascinating. And then when he starts talking about that he tried to remote view it, and as he was tuning in, he was met with this like electrical resistance. So, imagine trying to connect to something like this, and you're just completely thwarted, you're completely stopped. Now, if he was trying to remote view a drone, I mean, it's if this thing is completely electrical and not organic whatsoever, that kind of makes sense. But if he's remote viewing one of these orbs like that, what exactly is that then? So it does kind of adhere to the idea of some sort of plasmoid, but why the resistance so much? Because there are some studies with plasmas, and this is kind of interesting because people, some people believe when they see these lights in the sky, they are the ETs. The lights are the ETs, where they're not, they're not UFOs or something like that. That they are actually the beings, and I'm not discrediting that at all. This is, I'll kind of say this. I'll qualify this, that I'm more on board with like the smaller balls of light being the beings, because I've seen that kind of transformation occur. I've talked in the past about my experience in the Goldenrod showboat, where like this little bar of light became this ball of light, and it had this when it was on the ground as a bar and then it started to move, it kind of like did this wavy thing, and then boom was the ball of light. And so we always wondered, because there were three of us that were there at the time, was that a fairy, or what we would call a fairy? And it was on the ground at the time producing this light. And then as it was taking off, the oscillation was so fast that it just became like this translucent yellow ball of light, and you couldn't like really see whatever was really the source at that point. So yeah, I'm on board with that. Plus, with the experience that I had at Hinsdale House with Megan Talbert and the little pinpricks of light coming down. So I have this clip. Also, again, there's going to be links down there in the description, certainly with the what we were just talking about with the portals in the wilderness, also mysterious lights in the woods. That was a blog article. It was a previous class here that we did this fall. All those links will be down there. So this is actually a preview from Shadow Dimension, not season 2. It's Shadow Dimension Beyond the Shadows, which will be a 90-minute film. So this is a preview from that. We decided to take a break and just hang out by the fire that we had going behind the house. There's a nice big bonfire area. And so we're just talking and stoking the fire, and all of a sudden, down out of the woods, filtered these little blue lights.
I remember just looking over, and it really took me a moment to process it. And there was this, little blue ball of light that was hovering about maybe a foot and a half off the ground, and it just stayed there. Like I'm staring at it, and I think I grabbed your leg because I couldn't even talk. I didn't know what to do. I'm like, I need somebody else to see this.
Somewhere in the air, those were kind of twinkling a little bit, little blue twinkles. But then there were some that were down on the ground that would slowly morph into a bright blue light and then dissipate away, and then morph back into a light and dissipate away.
I don't know if the night vision's actually picking up on these glows.
I know we might seem really big to you, but we're not here to harm you.
Yeah, we're trying to be careful.
Oh, right there.
I see it.
Hi.
Hi.
There's 2. They were different in that some of them were just a constant bright blue light, and I mean like a bright blue light, like something you would see on the end of like an e-cigarette or something. It was like that bright fluorescent electric blue light. And I remember getting up close to them, as close as I thought I could on the ground. I mean, it felt like we were about like that far away because you could see them. So the fact that they were kind of dimming in and out sometimes, some of them stayed really strong, some of them flickered and then were gone. But I've never seen anything else.
Yeah, that it was really frustrating. It was wonderful. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience. Really, really frustrating trying to get these things on camera. We tried. There I'm using the IR. Could not get those things to show up on IR. Megan had a full spectrum camera, could not get to show up in full spectrum, and so I went, down there. You're getting on the ground and everything with your camera, and I ended up using just regular mode, but it's dark outside, so I got like 2 seconds of a little blue something in one particular clip, and that was it. But these things were everywhere; they were all over. And they originally, I thought that they were coming. They had once been a giant ball that we had witnessed earlier in the evening, way back out in the woods, kind of dancing around the trees. And for those that have commented before on the last video or the last class, when it was like, well, as a paranormal investigator, you should have gone all the way out there. It's private property. Okay, we couldn't go out there. Yes, we wanted to. We got as far as to the edge of the property that we could. We weren't going to get Dan in trouble with the neighbor and trespass because apparently she doesn't like what's going on down at the Hinsdale house with paranormal investigations and all that stuff. So we don't want to cause any trouble. So yes, on a normal occasion, Kenny, would have gone out there into the woods, but trying to be respectful. Yeah. So originally I thought, all these little pinpricks of light had started off as the ball that we were seeing dancing out there, and then came down. But now, after doing a lot of this type of research, I believe more so that the giant ball back out in the woods was a portal that they used to come down. Now, still, you had these little balls of lights, actually being the entities themselves, and not fireflies. I know some people go there, fireflies, blue fireflies do exist in the Carolinas in June. This was New York at the end of September. Yeah, no, not fireflies. So so it's kind of interesting here. As scientists continue to do this plasma research. I'm gonna again read this off here. So this is from a plasma study in the early 2000s, published in 2007 in the New Journal of Physics. And the statement is, these interacting complex structures exhibit thermodynamic and evolutionary features thought to be peculiar only to living matter, such as bifurcations that serve as memory marks, self-duplication, and more. Okay. So associated with living matter. That in itself is fascinating, that this, to a degree, has some properties similar to living matter that other objects just don't. So it does make you wonder if in some way, shape, or form or fashion, if that plasma ball is alive. Now, I'm not going to say that for every ball of plasma. I mean, again, look at our sun. Do you think that the sun is a living being? I don't know about that. Okay. But it does have so many connections back to the universe that you could, in a way, say that it is very much an intricate part of all living organisms, especially here on Earth. I mean, that's our primary source of life. Between the sun, we need the sun, and we need water. Those two things are for humans, oxygen. Those are the primary things that make us live. Those two things, we need them. But the sun is also connected to, I'm going to show this again, the Chandra X-ray telescope image. All the galaxies, all those little yellow and orange dots are galaxies across the universe. And you can see how they are connected through the gases. So it's an intricate web of connection. So this could be because we still lack a complete understanding of how the other dimensions work. I mean, we are a fourth dimensional consciousness inside a third dimensional body. The fourth dimension is time, which doesn't really exist because he travels through time. The other dimensions above ours, 5, 6, 7, and onward, we don't really completely understand. So, yeah, these manifestations of these balls of light, these plasmoids, whatever you want to call them, could be coming from some other dimension out there. And we are not completely understanding exactly what we're seeing. And what I mean is, use the example of flatland. So if you have a completely two-dimensional surface, flatland, everything there is a two-dimensional object, circles, squares, triangles, that's it. Okay. So when we talked earlier about circle and three-dimensional space being a sphere, no sphere, it's a circle. But if you were to drop a sphere into flatland, what would they see? And you just have this flat surface, you're going to drop this ball right into it. Well, they wouldn't see the sphere. What they would see is this small circle start to emerge and get wider and wider and wider until it reaches its full circumference. And as it continues to pass through, it would shrink and shrink and shrink back down till we got to that extremely small circle and disappeared. So, that happens because that's all that the flatlanders can perceive. That's their geometry. Okay. For us, yeah, we're three-dimensional space. We have three-dimensional geometry. The fourth dimension of time is elusive to us, but we're kind of caught in this river. There's a control mechanism in place. Well, what's the fifth dimension look like? We have this idea of a tesseract, and you see the illustrations of it, and they just stick a cube on top of a cube, which is really heavy-handed. I don't think it's a cube on top of a cube, but it's something else. And when we see those higher dimensional objects pass into our realm of existence, we don't quite understand what we're seeing. It might look similar to what we understand in three-dimensional space, but it would have these other properties that just are beyond us at this point. We can dream up ideas, we can theorize, we can write some science fiction to try to explain these things, but we're not going to completely understand it. So is that what we're seeing with some of these different manifestations? It could even be something that we might consider a ghost or an apparition or things like that. But are some of these what we're calling orbs, light anomalies, plasmoids? Is that what we're seeing? Is something from another dimension connecting with ours? And then are these beings using that to come through? And these smaller ones that we're believing may actually be the beings themselves, are they encasing themselves in something to maybe survive our dimension? Is that a smaller part of the transportation mechanism? Like, again, it's science fiction, but you look at something like the movie Contact. Well, she was in that ship that they had her, that capsule that they had her, or they had the humans create, and dropped her into essentially the wormhole. She's traveling through the wormhole in this sort of capsule. Well, is that, but she's a living being inside. So are we talking about different layers here? That could possibly be as well. So these are things that we're going to continue to dive into. We're going to continue to research, because that giant ball of light hovering in the sky, shining like that could be the portal. Light anomalies zipping across the sky could be a craft from another dimension for a moment entering into ours. We get a glimpse of it, not fully understanding exactly what it is. Could be a being, or the large ball of light out there in the woods. Again, could be the access point for a lot of these different types of entities, whether you want to call them fairies or Sasquatch, or maybe the Pukwudgies and all these things are coming through there. And the little, points of light that, Megan and I saw, maybe those are the beings themselves that have come through the portal. So a lot of different ideas here to, you could say it's very speculative work, but that's where you start. Some people say, it's pseudoscience and things like that. Well, most of our science started as pseudoscience. You had to start with these ideas and, eventually take it to some place that we've come to now. It just, we didn't just suddenly, this is this truth, this is this truth, this is this truth. Science has been ever evolving. It has not been stagnant. And you had these guys in the late 1800s believing that, well, we figured it all out. There might be some tweaks here and there, but how far have we come since the 1800s, right? Yeah, it's ever evolving. And while some will scoff, some will be skeptics, all that sort of thing, you got to keep going with it. I've always contended, and people who've read my books have seen me say this, usually in an introduction somewhere. that I always reserve the right to change my mind. That's because we are constantly learning, we are constantly evolving. So, and if you even look at my books, A Walk in the Shadows and Travels Through Time, the incident at Johnny V's, I was strictly for a while on the idea that it was interdimensional. And to a degree, I'm still on board with that, except I've now changed that to this idea that it was probably more of a time related incident, maybe some sort of time slip or something like that. It still has interdimensional type properties to the event, but quite different. That those ideas have now evolved over time, as it were. But yeah. So you can take this with a grain of salt if you want, but we are going to keep diving into this research and going down the rabbit hole with these ideas, because there is absolutely something there. Something is going on. So, all right, that is going to do it for this episode of Connecting the Universe. Again, those who are listening to the podcast version of this later, please join us every Wednesday night, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. Till next time, time really exists.